Hey, welcome back. This is Derek from Marriage and Repair Shop. Hey, we last time we left off, we were talking about the engagement. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the engagement in a different aspect. Before we get started, let me put on my nifty difty thinking cap today, and we're going to talk about the engagement. So the engagement we talked about last time, how important the engagement was in a relationship. We talked about how basically the engagement is really the glue to your marriage. The engagement is what actually keeps your marriage going around and keeps your marriage in sync. Without the engagement, we talked about that you really don't have a marriage. You just have really a roommate because your marriage is pretty much just a paper marriage and not a interactive marriage. So there's a lost art to engaging. I'm going to read this from the book Marriage and a Repair Shop. Have you ever been in a situation where your spouse comes home from work and you both are too busy to have a conversation? Just a quick hi, a quick hello. I can say that I'm guilty of that. Or have you and your spouse ever been into a situation where you got into an argument or a deep discussion that the agreement was not met during that time, and then afterwards there was a period of silence for maybe 1 or 2 days? Now, when that happens, one thing that I must say is that the art of engagement is a art where you have to know how to use it. Sometimes there's a time to be quiet, sometimes there's a time to speak. However, 2 days of not speaking is 2 days too long. One day of not speaking is one day too long. Do you know how much can happen in a 48-hour time span in a person's mind when there's no communication on the engagement? Well, too much. There's a lot that can happen. So we want to actually keep the art of engagement, and we want to make sure that we're using it correctly. So in certain times, the engagement is, in most cases, the engagement is really, it's an option. It's always an option, because what it is, you have a choice. We all have choices in life, right? We have choices where we can decide to engage or we can decide not to engage. Well, that's a choice. And I always say in my vocabulary, I always say, well, that's a choice between you and God, because God gave you a voice to speak. But if you don't speak and use your voice, then you've taken away the gift that God has given you. But there's always a choice to engage. See, what happens when disengagement stops, there's a time where the mind begins to run rampant, because in a relationship, in a marriage, you just don't know what's really going on. A lot of times you're thinking, hey, what have I done? Have I done anything? Is this person just going through something that they haven't disclosed to me? But see, engagement is not just always talking about the good and the bad between the relationship. The engagement is also talking about what's going on in your day to day, what's changing in your life, what's happening in your career. Things that your spouse can be aware of, so they can be interceding, praying for you, talking to you. But if that's not happening, basically you leave the mind up to trying to figure it out, and that's not a safe space. So in the engagement, you have to begin to see what happens once the engagement does not happen. There's something called a silent separation. And I'm often shocked when you see people who've been married for um, 30, 40 years, and they say, hey, my husband and I, or my wife and I, we are deciding to get a divorce because we have grown apart. Well, here's my perfect point is when you grow apart, that means that there has been some areas in your relationship where there has not been any engagement. There's been too much free space, too much free time. So there should always be periods in your relationship where you're talking about the most important things, and that's you and your spouse. Those are the most important things. I know, some at the age that I'm at, some women in my age range, they're actually going through menopause. And menopause is having women actually, act a little bit different. They're trying to figure it out on their own. But at the same time, the people on the other end sometimes have to be the ones to suffer from the changes that the women are going through if it's not discussed openly. Men as well. Men at my age, sometimes they're going through ED, erectile dysfunction. And sometimes if that's not disclosed or discussed with your spouse seems to think, oh, he doesn't love me anymore. He doesn't care for me anymore. But if you don't disclose, hey, these are the problems that I'm having, then you are really missing the best piece of information that can keep your relationship growing. Those are two important pieces that should be talked about. So those are the things that keep the engagement. And then hopefully the spouses can understand, okay, honey, let me help you through these situations. How can I be more understanding? Where am I failing? Where am I understanding? What can I do to help you? So the engagement is basically, it should always turn into revelation knowledge. Okay. The Bible speaks of revelation knowledge where you have a aha moment and you say, this is what's happening. See, all the time, you think that it can be you or it can be something that you've done. And it's half the time it's nothing that you've done. It's just an emotion that someone is experiencing. So we want to continually to keep the engagement going. Hey, if you like these topics, what I'm going to ask you to do is leave a comment, like and subscribe, because these are the things that I want married couples to get. And these are some of the biggest struggles in the marriages that cause relationships to fall apart is the disengagement. So I want to hear your voice. I want to hear from you. I know many of you watch it. It shows me how many people watch it, but I want to hear your voice about these videos. So here's the thing. Engagement is really a big word, but it's a small matter in a relationship. So my book says, stop allowing small matters to destroy the big picture. In the big picture of your marriage, you might not always see the imperfections, but know that they are there and they are coming. Those imperfections come to make you stronger together. So even in the engagement, if you can talk about the imperfections, they make you stronger. And some people can't take criticism or conversation like that. But in order for your relationship to work, you have to be able to take the constructive criticism, not just you're fat, not just you're ugly, not just you stink. No, the constructive criticism. Hey, baby, I know that you have been doing things this way, but this is how I like to see things done this way with you. Hey, baby, I know you've been wearing this same outfit for over 10 years, but sweetheart, let me go out and buy you a new outfit so we can change up the picture of what you're wearing and we can look different in our photos. Something like that, but just don't say, hey, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, and you're dumb. Okay, so keep the engagement sincere. Keep the engagement to the place where you want to get results. Keep the engagement less argumentative if you can. If you begin to see arguments beginning to ramp up during the engagement, sometimes just back off. Winning the battle is not worth losing the relationship. So sometimes you just back off. And then when you back off, you think about, hey, okay, this is what we said, this is what we did. But yes, we want to get an end result. So then at the end, you want to come back maybe another day, but at least you're talking. You're not in silence. At least you're talking. So at least another day, you come back and say, hey, sweetheart, this is where we left off at. Hey, honey, this is where we left off at. Can we pick up from here? I digested what you said. So can we pick up and finish this conversation so we have an understanding? Running away is not the answer in marital issues. Running away and being silent for days and not speaking, not calling, not touching, that is a destroyer. That is a destroyer. Now, if you want your relationship destroyed, that's the way to do it. But running away is not the way. Being engaged, being loving, thinking about the vows that you made in your covenant, thinking about the relationships that you made. Yes, people do grow. And we have to understand that in stages of life, growth happens and people change. Your spouse changes. They change. As they begin to grow, they change. So they're not the same spouse that you knew 10 years ago. They're not the same spouse that you knew when you first got married. Yes, from level to level, they change. They experience new people in their lives. They begin to get more influence. So they begin to change. So don't expect for them to be the same one that you met years ago, because the engagement, if you have engagement and communication, that is what's going to keep you knowing who your spouse is becoming to be. Okay, so the engagement is very important. I just wanted to chime in with you today. We're going to keep this going. We're going to keep dropping these nuggets. I want to say God bless you. Keep the engagement. Until next time, have a blessed day.